It was an interesting Thursday night, and it was actually an interesting week. What happened was, in the aftermath of the John Gruden resignation, I became very troubled by the reality that there are 650,000 Washington football team investigation emails out there that are supposedly being kept secret unless and until they want to peel off a few of them and bring someone down. That is a tremendous amount of power that, if in the wrong hands, can create all sorts of problems. And it's clearly in the wrong hands, or they wouldn't have brought John Gruden down when they did. And I wanted to talk to Jeff Pash, the NFL General Counsel, about the various questions that are related to this entire situation. And the NFL declined, and maybe now we know one of the reasons why the NFL declined. As it turns out, Jeff Pash was one of Bruce Allen's pen pals, along with John Gruden. Now, this story from the New York Times last night, I think the Wall Street Journal also has an item. There are not emails remotely close to the kind of racist, transphobic, homophobic, misogynistic content that John Gruden had communicated to Bruce Allen. But the picture that's painted between Bruce Allen and Jeff Pash, and Peter, I'll give you an opportunity to disagree with me completely if you choose to. The picture that's painted is not the one that I think a league office should have with an individual team president. There needs to be an arm's length. No closer, no farther. All teams need to be treated the same, and there's a sense of a coziness there between Pash and Allen, taking a look at fines, rescinding fines. It's more than just political gamesmanship. It feels like there was a level of closeness between the two that will upset the other 31 teams now that this is out in the open.
I mean, Mike, it's, some of the emails that we both read last night in the New York Times story, and great work by the Times, by the way. Some of the emails you read just make you uncomfortable with whether there was a finger on the scale from the NFL office to the Washington organization. The NFL will say absolutely, totally not. But when you have the lawyer for the NFL saying to Bruce Allen, the president of Washington football team, I know you are on it and would not condone something untoward. I mean, that basically says you have prejudged the case before the case has begun. And you can be friendly with people and you can be close to them, but when cheerleaders and with women start to say to publicly that, we have a problem with sexual harassment, the league then cannot say to Washington, the league can't say, listen, we know you guys are handling this right. Let's look into this, but we know you wouldn't condone anything like this. Well, all you have to do now is look at the evidence. 40 women alleging sexual harassment. And in the NFL's own words, at the end of that case, it was one of the worst examples they've ever seen of culture within any franchise in the NFL. So to me, it smells very bad, and it looks almost as bad.
Let me give you the best example that I can think of off the top of my head, Peter. Do you think Jeff Pash made comments like that to anyone from the Patriots in the early days of Deflategate? I know that you wouldn't be involved in anything like that. Don't worry, everything will be fine. No, the perception was Pash was out to get them. And I still believe to this day that they made way too much out of it than they should have, that the investigation they conducted did not have conclusive evidence to support the findings that they were trying to jam into the round hole with the square peg. So when teams see that there's that level of coziness and that level of deference, it does create subtle competitive issues. Not obvious, not as obvious as running off a team's head coach in the middle of a season, and I'm going to get to that in a moment because I have a broader concern here. But the Pash-Allen relationship shows a level of comfort and something closer than arm's length. I think all 32 teams, that's the challenge for every sports league. All 32 teams need to be held at the same distance. You don't antagonize them You don't go after them unnecessarily. You don't treat them like pariahs, but you don't treat them like best friends either. There's a certain range where they all should be kept, and that's part of the obligation of a league office.
I think there's going to be time when the dust settles on this thing. There's going to be, if all the players who are involved in this story retain their current positions in the NFL, I think there's going to be a time, if Roger Goodell is not tone deaf, and many times, and I think sometimes in this story he has been tone deaf, but I think if Roger Goodell is looking at his league honestly and is going to continue as commissioner and keep the people in place who are currently in place, then it's going to be what I would call time for a learning experience. And that learning experience is going to be Roger Goodell holding up these emails in front of everyone in his senior staff and saying, do you see how bad this makes us look? This is a lesson for us all. Don't do this. Don't say this. Don't have chummy emails to people who you may trust very, very much, but who might be in the middle of an absolute crap storm. Don't do it. And that, to me, if and again, look, we haven't seen everything yet. Who knows what is in the rest of these emails? But to me, that is something that the league has to take out of this. And if they don't, then they truly are a tone-deaf organization.
Let me get to that. We'll circle back to Pash because I want to get your thoughts on some of the specific statements he made. Again, it was not anything close to what Gruden said, but Pash, who's been a lawyer for decades, should know better than to reduce to writing, which gets preserved forever, things that could be problematic for him later. And, hey, when I practice law, it's hard to win a case with testimony because you're not going to get Jack Nicholson to crack and say, you're damn right I did. You're going to win your case with documents. The documents are where the smoking guns reside, and it's stunning to me that Pash would allow himself to be compromised even to the smallest degree. However, we've got 650,000 emails that supposedly were buried under 300 feet of reinforced concrete, never to be seen again. That was the end result back in July. No written report from Beth Wilkinson. We're just going to levy the punishment, and we're going to move on. And they played it perfectly. The world moved on. Nobody said boo, for the most part. Then we get to October, and all of a sudden, for reasons that aren't clear and may never be clear, Peter, a handful of documents get sent by the league office to the Raiders regarding John Gruden. Why now? Why now? When did they first find these documents? Why now were these documents peeled off of the 650,000 document stack and sent to the Raiders with an expectation that the Raiders were going to do something? And eventually the Raiders did by, I believe, telling John Gruden, we're going to have to fire you if you don't quit. So he quit. Why then, after that, did someone peel off some of these emails about Jeff Pash and make them available? And it's possible you've got different people with different agendas and different motivations who are leaking different things here. But the people who have access, and I don't know how many people do have access to these documents, they have a tremendous amount of power because whoever is compromised in those emails, whoever it is, and we don't know and we won't know until they're all released, whoever is in there at any given time, they can be taken down. Potentially. I'm not comfortable with the NFL generally having that power or specifically the individuals who have access to those emails having that power. That's one of the big reasons I've said and will continue to say they all need to be released now. So you don't go around. You know, and I think the extreme example here is you take a stack of emails to somebody before they're ever even leaked or reported or anyone does anything with them and says, take a look at these and you decide what you're going to do. And somebody quietly resigns from their job as coach of a team and we never hear from them again and we never know why. It's because somebody weaponized these emails. I'm not comfortable with these emails in a position where they can be weaponized against specific individuals.
The emails, in essence, is one person who's very close to the NFL told me this week. The emails against John Gruden basically were a mafia hit. And, you know, you think about that and you say, ooh, boy, that's harsh. Well, wait a minute. John Gruden had nothing to do with the Washington football team investigation. John Gruden was just in his own misogynistic way, was sending emails to buddies who he knew were of the same mind than he was. And so it sounds like I'm saying, oh, poor John Gruden.
No, you're not defending him. You're not defending him, but it is indefensible that he's the one of all these people that got picked out. That's what's indefensible.
Yeah. And I think the thing that bothers me the most about all this, and I've really felt the entire week, my feeling hasn't changed since I read that story in the Times on Monday night. My feeling hasn't changed. And the feeling basically is that Daniel Snyder gets a $10 million fine. What does that team take in every year? $300 to $400 million. So basically, Daniel Snyder, for 1 year, gets 5% of his income taken away. Boo-hoo-hoo. And then Daniel Snyder has his wife take over operations of the team, sort of. How do we know what is talked about, when a decision has to be made? How do we know that Daniel Snyder isn't the one making that decision? But be that as it may, Daniel Snyder will walk into work on March 1st after another lousy Washington season, which is all they have. Daniel Snyder will walk into work on March 1st and, with a clean bill of health. Everything's going to be fine. That's in the past. We're only looking forward. Well, on March 1st, John Gruden, who had nothing to do with that investigation, is going to be sitting in his shorts and T-shirt watching film in Tampa, wondering, what do I do with the rest of my life, which is now ruined? And I'm not crying for John Gruden at all. I'm just simply saying that what happened here stinks.
You're absolutely right, Peter. And the question this week that I've gotten from so many people is John Gruden the outlier, or is there a vast majority of people who communicated with Bruce Allen and others who worked for the Washington organization and maybe others who were in the organization communicating among themselves, communicating with outsiders? We don't know. We don't know where this lands between the two extremes of John Gruden was the only one who was engaging in this kind of over-the-top, offensive, inappropriate communication, and everyone was doing it unless we see. We got to see. And until we see someone has the power to pick and choose. Let's take a look at our enemies list. Let's see. Let me check my notes app in my phone and see who we don't like today. Today, we don't like this guy. Hey, go check those emails, please, the 650,000. Do a global search. See if I don't like this guy. I used to like this guy. I don't like this guy anymore. He said some stuff that I just don't like. I saw him on TV, and he was saying some things about the league that I just don't like. Let's check those emails. That's the power that someone currently has. And that's what I've been trying to wake people up to. And as you said, when you call it a mafia hit, it does sound like hyperbole, but these are mob practices to be able to just kind of pick and choose who goes down and when they go down. Peter, the light bulb came on for me today, and I mentioned this briefly a little bit ago, but let's focus on this. When did they first find the John Gruden emails? When? During the 10-month investigation that ended in July did they first find them? When did they first find them, and why didn't they go to Mark Davis with them the day they found them? And if they didn't do it then, what day did they decide to do it? And why did they decide to do it the day that they did? Why did they decide within the last 2 weeks we're going to put this packet of emails together and send them to Mark Davis? I don't want to be trite about this, but was the tipping point because he complained about the roof at SoFi Stadium not being lightning proof? Was the tipping point that he complained about the visiting team locker rooms at SoFi Stadium, the new crown jewel of the NFL? Turn on NFL Network any given moment. You got a shot from a drone of SoFi Stadium. It's the Taj Mahal of the NFL. How dare you criticize SoFi Stadium? I don't know, because the timeline makes no sense to me. Somebody decided after this thing was buried underground to dip back in and pull out documents and take down John Gruden. That is chilling. It is sinister. It is evil, and it needs to be exposed.
I hope it will be. I hope it will be exposed. Excuse me, because I don't know where it came from. I don't know if it came from a rogue investigator. I don't know if it came from, inside the league office. I don't know where it came from. And I prefer, until I have some evidence where it came from, to not make absolute value judgments that it came from place X, Y, or Z. But wherever it came from, the bothersome thing right now, as you say, Mike, is that they basically apparently can pick out whoever is the person who has his finger on the switch of these emails. That person can figure out what to do next. Because now it's a matter of who's next. Who is next? I don't know who's next. But if I were somebody who corresponded a lot with Bruce Allen, I'd be pretty concerned.
Or if I was somebody who had a email account through the Washington football team, worked there as a head coach, assistant coach, maybe working somewhere else as an assistant coach or a head coach now, previously worked for the Washington football team for a number of years. I'd be worried that maybe there's something in there that someday, some way, and let's just call it like it is. What if you're Kyle Shanahan or Sean McVay, two NFL head coaches right now who were longtime assistants to the Washington football team? Are they not wondering, what the hell did I ever put in my email all those years I worked there? Is there something in there that somebody is going to try to mischaracterize, that somebody is going to try to blame me for, that somebody is going to try to take out of context, and I got to worry about this now? I better never piss off the league office or whoever it is that's got their finger on this trigger. That's the kind of fear that is going to be struck in the hearts of anybody who thinks one or more of my emails may be in that 650,000 document vault. And Peter, one last point, because we had a conversation about this earlier this week for a Yahoo video. I understand that how it got leaked to the media is one thing, but I think it's undeniable based on the facts that the league decided to make this a thing in the very recent past by taking some of those emails and sending them to the Raiders. The leak of the DeMaurice Smith derogatory email that John Gruden sent came after someone at the league decided we're going to send a subset of these documents to Mark Davis and see what he does with it. So the league itself started this.
That timeline is correct. I'm not positive that timeline is correct because, if the story is in the Wall Street Journal at midday on Friday, then those emails would have had to been sent to the Raiders, I would assume the previous day, right? And Mark Davis was quoted as saying, we didn't know anything about this until this reporter called us. So, we're going to find out more about the timeline, but I don't think it's correct, at least from what I know right now, that the Raiders had the emails before they were called by Andrew Beaton of the Wall Street Journal.
It's just kind of a weird reality then if one document gets out to the Wall Street Journal and the NFL decides, well, we better send 20 or 50 or however many they sent to the Raiders. It's just the whole thing stinks. The whole thing is odd. It's bizarre. And the only way to prevent this kind of thing from happening moving forward, because Jeff Pash has been victimized by it too. And we know John Gruden has been. We don't know who's next. I don't think we should be operating in this environment of who's going to be next. Now, the problem is if you release them all, there may be some people who say, well, geez, they never would have gotten to me. Why are they all released? But I think the only way to be fair to this and to take away that power that someone has is so rare and poisonous that it needs to be diffused. And the only way to do it is release all the emails. That's the only way to do it. And because they clearly can't secure them, Peter, whether they're doing it deliberately or accidentally, they're not securing the documents that they told us were going to be kept forever secret. They're not. They're failing twice now. And you're right. Who's next? And we just have to sit back and wait for the next drop of a New York Times or Wall Street Journal story during a football game of somebody else who's going to be put in a position where, right, they're either going to be out of a job or they're going to have to worry about whether or not they're going to be out of a job. What do you think this does to Pash?
Pash is so highly regarded by Roger Goodell that just my gut feeling, knowing the way the league works, I don't think Pash is going to resign. I don't think they'll ask him to resign. I think what Pash will probably do is issue a statement at some point, and he'll basically say that I didn't do anything really over the top, but I need to be more careful in, when I communicate with anybody in this league. That's just my gut feeling, but I really don't know.
And we would be naive to not account for the possibility that what emerged last night is not everything. Because when the first emails emerged, and it was one email from Gruden, it was not everything. And I think if Gruden would have wisely resigned Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or Monday morning, the other stuff never would have been handed to someone for the world to see. So if there is other stuff...
Maybe.
Well,
maybe.
Okay.
I don't know.
But regardless, look, from Pash's perspective or anyone else, after the first leak, you got to ask yourself what else is out there and is it going to come out? And this is the opportunity to walk away before they make you run. That's another factor for Jeff Pash. And I think it's fair to say there could be other stuff. This isn't a comprehensive set of every email, every quote that we saw last night. We didn't have the time to get into some of the details. They're posted in the New York Times article. We deal with one of them. There's one that bothers me, and particularly about his attitude toward players being forced to take pay cuts. You can see that story at ProFootballTalk.com.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.